What are you doing? What thoughts in your life are weakening you? And what's keeping you from being in touch with your own superpower? Welcome to the Serenity Journey. My name is James, and I help people on the pathway to inner peace. We've been doing a review of Dr. Wayne Dyer's 10 Secrets for Success in Inner Peace, and we are actually on the 10th principle, which is wisdom. The pathway to wisdom is learning to eliminate all thoughts that weaken you. And so I thought today we'd talk about what are our thoughts, how our thoughts are formed, how our beliefs are formed, and how these thoughts and beliefs that are inside of our mind create our perception of reality and helps to strengthen or weaken us as we try to live our life. And then how do we find what is it in our mindset, in our beliefs, in our way of being that is our superpower? What is it that makes us gives us the ability to really create in our lives the experiences that we desire and to best serve other people? I believe we all have a superpower somewhere inside of us. Some people are able to figure it out. Some people are not. Some people struggle with their superpowers. Sometimes my superpower is also my kryptonite. In other words, what gives me the most strength and the ability to help people the most is also the part that weakens me the most if it's not used properly, if I'm not using it in balance. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit as we go through the show today. Thank you for joining us. We are, I know, going live again within just a couple of days. But what we're doing is I joined a challenge from a channel here on YouTube called Live Streaming Pros. One of my mentors in this live streaming space and content creation space. And so she's put out this challenge to go live every day in August. And so I decided to participate. I may not make it every single day, but I'm going to try to do at least a long or a short live stream every day in August. Maybe I may make it some days. I may miss a few days here and there with our crazy, hectic, chaotic schedule that's going on because Emily's having surgery later this month and we got a lot of other stuff going on. But I'm going to try to participate in that and do the best I can to do a live stream every day this month. So what we're doing is we are going to wrap up the 10 Secrets for Success in Inner Peace, and then we're going to start talking about our 5 pathways to inner peace in some of our future live streams for the rest of the month, and really starting to define what these pathways are, how you can apply them to your life, and what it is that gets in the way of your own inner peace. That's really what this whole channel is about, is helping people find their own way to inner peace. So I started with this series from Dr. Wayne Dyer because, you know, he's a popular author. He's a person that has greatly influenced my life and the lives of a lot of other people I've talked to. So, what this 10th principle that he talked about in the book, The 10 Secrets for Success in Inner Peace, which if you're interested, you can find a link to that book down in the description below. That book, the 10th principle, is all about avoiding the thoughts that weaken you. And this is something that's very difficult. This is what I spent a lot of the time in the last year myself going through, is identifying what thoughts strengthen me, what thoughts weaken me. And this is something I struggled with for most of my life. And I'm better at it now than I used to be. So we're going to talk about that in depth tomorrow. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We already have the stream set up, so you can set up the reminder for that. But one of the things that I find is that we have thoughts, and all of our thoughts create our perception of reality. When you have a thought, your thoughts create your beliefs, and your beliefs create your expectations of what's right and wrong, what the life should be like. And those expectations create our perception, how we define whether something's a positive experience or a negative experience. It really comes down to understanding our beliefs and our expectations, which are in the subconscious mind. But those all begin as thoughts. And when we accept those thoughts to be true, then it gets stored in the subconscious mind, and it starts either strengthening us or weakening us. And sometimes it's not the challenges that we face. It's not the labels that we have on ourselves. It's not the things that we face in our lives that creates whether it's empowering or disempowering. It's our perception of what they mean. And perception is more important than reality, because perception is going to determine whether you see something as being successful or being a failure. Perception is what's going to determine whether you see a problem or an opportunity. Those are perceptions. Whether you're seeing something as good or bad, that's perception. And it's opinion based. And you can change opinions. You can change perceptions. But most people don't. Most people live their whole life living by a set of perceptions that were handed to them as a child, and they never change it throughout their entire life. They never challenge those perceptions throughout their entire lives. When you really embrace this, eliminate all thoughts, and I want to say all ideas, beliefs, and perceptions that weaken you. How do we do that? This is where we start feeling our way through our thoughts instead of just thinking our way through our thoughts. Instead of just allowing our thoughts and accepting our thoughts to automatically be true, we start questioning our thoughts. Is that thought strengthening me? Is that thought absolutely true? Is that thought just an idea that was planted in my mind by somebody else and that I accepted to be true because somebody told me to believe it was true? This is really, really want, because you're going to start learning to adjust your perceptions of the world around you by analyzing your own thoughts. This requires a lot of mindfulness. It requires being mindful of the life that you have and recording those thoughts. One of the best quotes I ever heard from Tony Robbins years ago, it took me years to really get it and start doing it myself, is if your life's worth living, it's worth recording. And what it means is that's when I really started getting this, when I started getting into journaling, writing down my thoughts, writing down my ideas, and then really pursuing those thoughts. What does this thought mean to me? What does this idea mean to me? And does this thought strengthen me or weaken me? And when I started really looking at my thoughts that way, and I started feeling them, what emotional attachments do I have to those thoughts? That really started getting me to grow and helping me to be in a better perception of the way I looked at the world. And that's something that's going to help you really start taking your life to the next level. When you can start perceiving your thoughts as strengthening you or weakening you, now you have more power to choose whether to believe in the thoughts you're having or not. Now you're in a position to where you can start cutting out thoughts that do not serve you. And that's something that so many people struggle with. That's something I struggled with for years, is having all these thoughts and these patterns of thought in my own mind that kept me from living my life to the fullest, that kept me locked in fear. And that's one of the keys. We want to look at our emotional connection to our thoughts. Are you thinking thoughts that are based in fear or based in love? If you can find that connection to love, then in your thoughts, and start aligning your thoughts with thoughts that are more loving, that brings you into better alignment with source and how source perceives your experience, how your higher self, your spirit sees the situation you're in. When you're feeling negative emotions, when you're feeling guilt, shame, blame, jealousy, anger, rage, all of these lower energies are weakening you. These are the emotions of force, where you have to force things to happen. You have to make things better. You have to make things. This is where motivation and self-discipline, when you're in these lower energies, lower thought energies, you have to use motivation and discipline to get things done. When you get into the higher energies, the expressions of love, then you start getting into thoughts that empower you and inspire instead of motivate. You can be inspired. In inspiration in the spirit means you're in alignment with spirit in your thoughts and in your beliefs and in your ideas and your perceptions. And when you are in that alignment, now that inspiration will draw you towards something instead of pushing you away. I think about it this way. I did a program a few years ago, and I've thought about recreating the program now that I've learned so much more since then, called Moving from Desperation to Inspiration. And in that program, one of the things that I talked about was that desperation comes from lower level thoughts, and inspiration comes from these higher level thoughts. And those desperation means you have to push. This is where discipline, this is where motivation, because you're pushing yourself to improve. You're pushing yourself to get better. When you get into inspiration, higher level thought, higher level awareness, you start connecting with spirit. You start connecting with spirit guides. You start connecting with things. They're going to motivate you. You're going to start developing a vision of the ideal future for yourself. And when you start having that vision of who you are, that vision of what your life is meant to be, and you start having that vision of where you're going in your life, that will draw you through the difficult times. And pulling is much more powerful than pushing. Pushing is when you get burnout. Pushing is when you get exhausted and you just need a break from the world for a while. When you start getting pulled through, when you start getting into that inspired action and you start taking action from inspiration instead of desperation, you start getting pulled towards your destiny, towards your purpose, towards the mission you were born to fulfill in your life. And that pull will draw you through those tough times. It's not easy, but it's easier. It's the pathway of least resistance to creating the life that you want. It's not the pathway of no resistance. There is still resistance. There's still going to be competitiveness with other people, or there's still going to be things that draw you away, that bring you back into fear states or bring you back into lower energies. But you'll be drawn into those higher energies. You'll be drawn into living in a better state of mind. And as you get into that, this brings you more peace. As you start aligning your choices with that destiny that you were born to fulfill, that's going to give you a sense of peace. And when you get into that calm, neutral state emotionally, it's where I try to tell people this is where you want to go. You don't want to necessarily be at the top. So many people are trying to move themselves from being at the bottom of the scale, which is depression or anger or fear, low negative energy, to a high positive energy. And a lot of people start trying to fake it, thinking that that'll just automatically make it happen. And I think fake it till you make it, I've said this in some of my other videos and I've gone more in depth into it, is one of the worst things that you can do in your life. Faking it till you make it is one of the worst things that you can do if you really want to find peace with yourself, because you will always feel that lack of integrity. You will feel that lack of authenticity with yourself when you're trying to fake it. Instead, you want to not feel bad about feeling bad. You want to know that it's okay to be in those low energy states. It's okay to be in those low energy places. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last year, is that I don't have to feel bad about feeling bad, that I can have a bad day, that I can have a low emotional energy day. I just have to recognize that's where I'm at. And that the more I recognize where I'm at, then I'm empowered to shift that. I'm empowered to take actions that will move me into a higher energy state. But we have to do that authentically. We can't fake our emotions, because you can't fake being in alignment with your spirit. You can't fake being true to who you are. You can't fake integrity. Being fake is the exact opposite of living with integrity. So if you're faking it, if you're pretending to be somewhere emotionally that you're not, if you're pretending to think positive thoughts, you're lying to yourself. And I see a lot of people that do this. I see a lot of people living their life from that place. And as we start looking at our thoughts now, we look at the lower thoughts, the subconscious thoughts, the below consciousness thoughts, which one of the reasons why I love meditation. I think meditation works on all four aspects of ourselves. It works on the mind, the body, the spirit, and the emotions. And it works on all four areas, which is why I promote it so much. Now, I don't think it's a cure-all, but it is one of the most important tools in my arsenal. It's just a tool that we use. But are we thinking thoughts about the perceptions of the situations that we're feeling. When we're struggling with something, if we can go into quiet meditation and we can just contemplate the idea of that, and we ask ourselves, this negative emotional state, am I perceiving it properly? Am I perceiving this situation in the right way? Am I looking at this situation from the wrong lens, from an idea of what I think my life should be like, and it's not meeting that expectation? And so therefore I feel bad because I'm not living according to the expectations. Maybe it's not the thought that's wrong. Maybe it's the expectations we're weighing those thoughts against. Maybe it's the expectations versus the intentions of our soul that are out of alignment. So we have to dig deeper. We have to dig into the subconscious mind and bring those subconscious thoughts and ideas and expectations into our consciousness. And this is what we do with meditation. This is what we do with contemplation. Contemplation, Aristotle said, was the highest form of activity. So if you want to really have a high level of activity in your life, contemplate the life that you desire. Contemplate that which you want. A lot of people are spending their time and their energy contemplating what they don't want, what they feel is lacking in their lives, what they think is missing. And because they're contemplating those things, they're spending their time and their energy on those things. Those are the things that we see. One of the key understandings of understanding the mind that I've really honed in on in the last year is understanding that our perceptions of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what's missing, what's not missing in our lives comes from our attention to it. If your attention is on the lack of something in your life, your brain is going to look for ways to hold on to that belief. So it's going to be looking for evidence that that belief is true. Once you choose to believe in something, whether it's the lack of something or the having of something, your brain will continually look for the evidence of that belief. And you will find it. It will always find it. Even if it's true or not true, it will always find evidence to support your beliefs. And it will ignore all evidence that contradicts that belief. So we have to really sit down and say, does this belief, does this thought empower me or does it weaken me? If it empowers me, then that's a thought that I want to continue to hold on to. If it's a thought that takes me in the direction that brings me peace, that brings me joy, that brings me happiness, then that is something I want to hold on to. If it doesn't, if it makes me feel uncomfortable, if it makes me feel, then I have to look at, is it the thought that's making me uncomfortable, or is it the belief that's in alignment with that thought that makes me uncomfortable? Is it what that thought means to me, the perception of what that idea means that's uncomfortable? Maybe it's the perception of translating that thought that I need to shift. So it goes really deep. It's not something you can just fix on the surface. It's something that you have to really dig deep inside your mind, inside your consciousness, and start bringing up into your conscious thoughts, the unconscious beliefs, the unconscious aspects of our lives. It's been said that we think over 60,000 thoughts a day, but 50,000 of those thoughts are the same thoughts you thought yesterday and the day before and the day before that, because they're habitual thoughts. And this is why I like to look at the unconscious mind as the habitual mind. It's the habitual patterns that you've programmed to repeat over and over and over again without consciously thinking about them. And you can bring those into consciousness. You can look at your habitual patterns and see clues to what's stopping you from living the life that you desire. And then we also have to understand our own physicality of our thoughts, the physicality of how our brains work. And your brain will work differently than my brain does. You know, just an idea, and this is something that this is an idea that's going to get me in trouble with some people because they think that I'm not caring and compassionate with people in how I say this, because my perception of it is different than theirs. I have ADHD. I have my whole life. I was diagnosed with ADHD in third grade, but I was never trained or taught what that meant. I was never taught what the symptoms of ADHD were. I was never given any really education on ADHD. I was told I was worthless. I was told that I was a space cadet. I was called all kinds of things. I was told I would be dead or in jail by the time I was in my 20s if I didn't change my ways. And it was really because my symptoms of my ADHD, they were like, okay, you have this problem. Here's a pill that's going to fix your problem, and now you can just be normal. And then had it constantly pounded into me how out of normal I was and how I was a bad person because I wasn't quote unquote normal, because I didn't fit in. Even the pills didn't make me fit in. It kind of helped me with parts of it, like being able to focus on, school assignments and stuff. But it didn't take away the problem. It was just a crutch that helped me manage some of the symptoms, but not all of them. And it didn't take away some of the problems. And because of that, I struggled throughout my entire life, thinking how worthless I was, believing that I was lazy, that I was no good, that I was stupid, that I was all these things that were programmed into me by other people. And, I talk to people all the time. I love Clubhouse. I love, the communities of people, but I talk to people all the time that are like, highly successful. They have all these great careers and great jobs and all this stuff. And they've made all this money and they've done all these things that have made them really successful. And now they're in this spiritual journey of, releasing their attachments to to that idea of success or whatever. And they're great. And I appreciate those guys. And I think that they've got some beautiful stories. And I'm not here to downplay anything that they've done with their life. But their story is not my story. My story has been a story of struggle. My story has been one of failing at 99% of what I've done in my life. Failing at not being good enough. Failing at being lazy, not following through on things. Failing at being able to control my own mind. Failing, studying all these things in personal development and seeing all these struggles and failing to be able to follow through on the lessons I was learning. And then feeling bad about that, feeling bad about how I was. Now, in the last few months, as I've been studying ADHD, as I've been connecting with other people with ADHD, I'm finding that really most of the successes I have had have actually been because of my ADHD. And most of the failures I've had have been because of my ADHD. There's this whole debate on TikTok with the ADHD community on TikTok on whether or not ADHD is a superpower or your kryptonite. And for me, it's both. For me, my ADHD is my superpower and my kryptonite. It's what destroys me, but it's also what strengthens me. It's my greatest strength. My ability to hyper focus, my ability to, once I create a plan, once I get my mindset into something, which takes me forever to do, but once I do, I can make amazing things happen in a very short amount of time. And I've been able to do this most of my life. Every job I've ever had, I've been the quote miracle worker. Whenever they had something that had such a tight deadline that had to be done and everybody swore it was impossible, they would give the task to me because they knew I could get it done. But at the same time, if I get my mindset in the right place, it becomes my superpower. This is where we start looking at our thoughts. So this is one of the things that I've been looking at in my own life, okay, with my ADHD. It's something I've been working on in the last few months. Why is it that sometimes my ADHD is my superpower, and why is it sometimes it's my biggest weakness and my kryptonite? And it's all because of my mind. It's because of those beliefs in my mind that were ingrained into me as a child that have caused me to believe that when I'm having these bad days, I'm a bad person. It was those beliefs and those ideas that I needed to try to fit in with society. The second I decided my peace was more important to me than fitting in, my peace with myself, I'll tell you what, in the last year, the internal warfare that has ruled my life, the war going on inside my head, has been the biggest thing I've worked on in the last year, is getting rid of the warfare and finding peace in my own mind and in my thoughts and in my beliefs and in who I am. and changing my perception and realizing I'm empowered to choose my perception. I can perceive ADHD as a weakness, or I can perceive it as my superpower. I can perceive my inability to follow through and finish things that I started as a weakness, or I can perceive it as part of my strength. And I can see that my belief in what that means is one of my strengths. Because sometimes I drop things and let them go and move away from them because I'm not supposed to be doing that thing. That thing was a distraction that my mind latched onto, but it didn't last for a long time. The reason I go back to this spirituality stuff so much is the one thing I've been able to focus on for most of my life and really hone in. And as I started diving into studying life's purpose, which I got some stuff going on that later. I got some more videos coming out on how I do that. As I started really honing in on what my purpose of life, it was all about spirituality. And guess what? That's the one thing that I've ever been able to do in my life that really I was able to focus on and stay focused on it for long periods of time and not lose my passion. Even when I quit creating content on it, when I stopped doing it publicly, it was still a huge part of every decision that I made in my life. It just wasn't something I was doing publicly. It wasn't something I was out here sharing with the world the way I am now. But it's something that's been a huge part of my life. And I went back to even more beliefs, more thoughts, more ideas that were planted into my mind. I was told by one of my great teachers, and I love them dearly, but they told me repeatedly, it kind of ingrained in me this belief that I couldn't make money from doing that kind of work, that I couldn't charge people for that kind of work, that I couldn't develop programs to help people, that the only people that do books and programs on this kind of stuff are people that are working out of their ego. And because I believed in that, because I believed what they were telling me when they told me that, and I adopted that into my own life, I stopped myself from doing it. So my ADHD would kick in, and that part of my brain would go into overdrive saying, you can't do this. You can't make money from this. You can't make this your career. And so I stopped myself so many times. I first had the idea that I wanted to share these thoughts and ideas and my philosophies with people when I was 25 years old. I started knowing when I was 25 years old. I'm 45 now, working on 46. So 20 years ago, I knew this is what I wanted my purpose. This is what my purpose was. But I let other people tell me I couldn't do that for a living. I let other people tell me I couldn't pursue that path. And so I did their ideas, their mind thoughts as my own. I've been doing, and I have no grudges against them. It's not that I'm against people that believe that. You can believe whatever you choose, but it was a thought process that disempowered me from doing this stuff, that stopped me. In 2014, I was having this impostor syndrome, which is part of the ADHD, by the way, that was getting in my way. And then I was getting some negative feedback on some of my videos here on YouTube. And because of that, and because I was working through some depression, that was when my daughter was still in her first year. So we were dealing with a lot of struggles and conflict with her. And I was really in a low energy state. And then I started getting all these negative comments and negative feedback on my YouTube channel. So I deleted my blog, my YouTube channel, all the content that I had. I had been working on it for like 4 years. I had a ton of stuff going, and I deleted everything. It's one of the few regrets I have, because I'd probably be one of the biggest YouTube channels in this space right now if I hadn't have deleted everything in 2014, because I started this channel in 2010. You can even look at my About Me page on this channel. I started this channel in 2010. And that's when I started. I started it with the same content that I'm creating now with spirituality stuff. But I deleted all that content in 2014. At the time, between 2010 and 2014, I wasn't even looking at building an audience on YouTube, building views on YouTube. It was all back then. Everything I was doing was focused on building my blogs, and I was just putting videos on YouTube to embed on my blogs. So I wasn't really paying much attention to YouTube. When I started taking YouTube seriously a year and a half ago, I realized how much of a mistake I had made in doing all that. But it's too little too late by then. I don't have any way to retrieve all that old content and the views and the watch time and all the stuff that I had from all that. It's all gone now. And I can't feel bad about it. I kind of feel bad at times about it. I try not to because, it was some things I've grown a lot since then. There were some things that I was given negative feedback on that now, as my perception has changed, as I've grown since 2014, my perception now is different than it was back then. But it was sharing my journey. It was sharing where I was at the time. It was sharing who I was. And I was very raw and authentic with some of the stuff I was sharing. And that's what I'm trying to get back to. I'm trying to get back to that rawness, that authenticity. That's why I love live. Because when you're live, you see me raw and unfiltered. You don't see the edited, crisp and perfect version of me that we see. But when we do this, okay, we find our own superpower. Then we have a lot of beliefs that are keeping us from using it, that are making our superpower our weakness. This is what I see a lot in the ADHD community, and I'm not here to trash anybody. I'm not here to downplay anybody in the ADHD community's experience of it, because I had that same experience for most of my life. But I realized in myself that my perception of what those things meant was what was making it a weakness in my life. My perception, my beliefs about being wrong for being that way is what was making it a weakness in my life. That's what was destroying my life. It wasn't the actions I was taking. It wasn't the hyperactivity. It wasn't the procrastination that was weakening me. It was what those things meant to me. It was the beliefs I held about what those things meant that was causing it to be a weakness in my life. If you want your ADHD to be your superpower, the shift you have to make is to stop believing in society's rules that you're a bad person for having these experiences. Stop feeling bad about having bad days with your ADHD. Stop feeling bad about struggling with the things that you're going through in your life. And I'm just using ADHD as an example, but it's anything in your life. If you're feeling bad about your relationships, about your health, about your mental health, if you're feeling bad about the bad things that go on in your life, allow yourself to experience those things. You don't have to necessarily share them with everybody, but you can allow yourself to experience it and be at peace with yourself. My personal philosophy, it's something I've dealt with in the last year and a half, is my number one priority is peace with myself in my thoughts, in my actions, and in how I do my life. If I'm at peace with me, with the decisions I'm making, it doesn't matter who else is not at peace with it. It doesn't matter who else is disturbed. I have to be at peace with me because I have to be with me wherever I go. When you start looking at your thoughts this way, you start empowering yourself to create a better life for yourself. When you start looking at the beliefs and the perceptions you have a reality with, do they weaken you? Do they take you into the lower emotions? Or do they strengthen you and take you into the higher emotions? Well, how does it make you feel? How does your body feel with that thought? Your body will react to every thought you think. And if you start looking at your thought and really tuning into your body will tell you if you're thinking thoughts that are weakening you or strengthening you. Your body will tell you. You will have thoughts and they make you feel sick. Guess what? That is a thought that's weakening you. When you really tune into your thoughts and your body is telling you whether you're strengthening yourself or weakening yourself. Your emotions tell you whether those thoughts are strengthening you or weakening you. As you get into higher perspective and higher consciousness, you start getting in tune with your spirit and your spirit guides. Your spirit will tell you if you are thinking thoughts that are strengthening you or weakening you. It all starts inside. And you can do this. Everyone can do it. But it's also not going to shift overnight. Be better at it today than you were yesterday. That's the number one philosophy that I talk about over and over again. It's a journey, and you're going to be better today than you used to be. But you don't have to be perfect. Stop expecting yourself to be perfect, to have it all there. I'm not perfect at living these things, at controlling my own thoughts. But I'm better now than I was 6 months ago. I'm better now than I was a year ago. And because I'm better at controlling my thoughts, I'm better at controlling my emotions. I'm not as explosive as I was. I still have those explosive moments, but it's not every day. It's not happening all the time. It's not happening as much as it used to. I can think a thought and know that that thought is weakening me and not have to share it with the world. I can let thoughts come into my mind, but know that that thought is not in the right perception. And then I can rephrase that thought and reevaluate that thought. And I don't have to take action on those thoughts. I can hold back, keep my mouth shut. Sometimes this pisses people off too, and that's okay. As long as you know where you're coming from, as you're okay with where you're at, that's what matters. So focus on healing yourself with your thoughts, finding peace with who you are, with what you're thinking. Find your own superpower and figure out what is it in your perceptions of that superpower that are weakening you. Find what your strengths are and find where your weaknesses are really strengths that you just don't realize are strengths. Start looking at your weaknesses and saying, is it a weakness or is it my perception of it that makes it a weakness in my life? There's a lot of things and aspects of my life that I've always thought were weaknesses that have wound up being some of my greatest strengths because I shifted my perception of what they meant, because I shifted my ideas and my beliefs around what they meant. And I shifted my expectations in my subconscious mind. When you start controlling and reprogramming the subconscious mind, you empower yourself to create change. Start writing it down in a journal, writing down those thoughts in a journal. And what does that thought mean to you? What is the perception? What is the belief? Start writing it down in your journal. If you start doing this every day, just a few minutes a day, and start writing those thoughts and then say, okay, this is a thought that weakens me. This is a thought that I don't like. What would be a better thought? What would be a different thought? What shift could I make in that thinking that could change my perception, that could change me and strengthen me instead of weakening me? And when you start doing this with your mind, with your relationships, with your thoughts about your career, with your thoughts about your health, with your thoughts about everything in your life, you will start rewriting your agreement with reality. When you rewrite your agreement with reality, you shift your entire way of looking at the world. As Dr. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's one of the most powerful quotes I think he ever had. He wrote a whole book that was the title of. But that's one of the keys that I think is so important. And tomorrow, we're going to be wrapping this all up. And we're going to be wrapping up the 10 secrets for success and inner peace. And we're going to really focus on what I call the 11th principle, because it wasn't really one of the principles in the book, but he talked about it over and over again. And it's this idea of I'm not perfect, but I'm better now than I used to be. We're going to explore that idea, what it means, how we can use this in our lives, because that is my mantra. That is the idea that I use every day that helps me to know I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better today than I used to be. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better and better. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Until then, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. If you're new here, we are the Serenity Journey. Peace.